Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar organized by the Center for Information Integrity in the Internet. My name is Edson Tandoc Jr., and I'm the director of InCube and also a professor at the Wikimi School of Communication and Information at NTU Singapore. Today, we'll be sharing our findings from our survey, one of our panel surveys, the most recent one we've conducted in June this year, where we asked questions about generative AI and specifically the use of ChatGPT in Singapore. We've seen, the rise of generative AI in the past few months. In Singapore, we've seen all of these headlines, talking about, thinking about, how Singaporeans may be integrating AI in their work. A lot of people, even businesses, companies are talking about AI, their potential for investment, but also some people are also expressing concerns about how the use of generative AI may impact certain industries, certain professions, and also even in schools. There's a lot of talk about how we should be incorporating or regulating the use of generative AI and ChatGPT in the context of school and in education. And so in our survey in June this year, this is now something that we've started to track how often and how many of our participants are using generative AI and specifically ChatGPT in either their work or in school or on basically on a day-to-day basis. At InCube, we conduct panel surveys every 6 months where we ask questions about internet use, and we try to track how the use of the internet may be changing over time. And now we're considering generative AI as another form of internet use in Singapore. So this was an online survey. What we will be presenting to you this in this session comes from our Wave 6. The data was collected in June 2023. We have about 1,000 participants who completed the survey. The average age of our participants is 41.45 years. The sample is only adult population in Singapore, so we only recruited participants from age 21 up. And so younger participants were not included in the survey. In terms of our the racial composition of our sample, it's slightly skewed toward Chinese, 82%, 11% Malays, and 5% Indian. We tried to match the population distribution, but because this is a panel survey, we had some attrition along the way. So we tried to recruit the same group of people every time we do a survey so we can actually track changes in their internet use, if any. In terms of gender, we have almost an even split between male and female. So one of the questions we have asked in our survey is, familiarity. Basically, how familiar are people in Singapore with ChatGPT? And this is a question that we've also asked a few months before in another survey that we've done in February 2023. So in Feb 2023, about 34% said that they are not at all familiar with ChatGPT. Now in June, that's March, April, May, I think 4 or 5 months later, we see that percentage of participants saying they're not familiar at all with ChatGPT shrink to only 19.9%. And we have 7.4% in June saying that they're extremely familiar, 25.8% saying they're very familiar with ChatGPT. So we're seeing between February and June 2023 that public familiarity with ChatGPT has increased. We've also asked in our survey frequency of use. The specific question we asked is, in the last month, how often did you use ChatGPT? This is a question we've also asked in February 2023, where 58.3% of our participants said they have never used ChatGPT. So fast forward to June this year, that percentage of Participants who have never used ChatGPT has also decreased to 33.4%, with 9.1% of our sample saying they use ChatGPT very often, and 16.5% saying they use ChatGPT often. So again, even the frequency of use, we've seen an increasing trend from February through this year. Now, it's not just about familiarity and use, but also attitudes, So for our participants who say that they use ChatGPT, we've also asked them about their attitudes toward ChatGPT. One statement that we asked them to rate is, how much they agree or disagree that using ChatGPT is helpful. And here we see that 17.4% strongly agree with this statement. 45% say they somewhat agree. So I would say that I would say that the majority of the participants agree that ChatGPT is helpful. Another statement that we asked them to rate their agreement with is that whether using ChatGPT it helps them to save time. So the exact statement is using ChatGPT is time saving. And here we also see I think a largely positive attitude with 43.7% saying they somewhat agree with the statement, and 20.2% saying they strongly agree that using ChatGPT helps them to save time. But we also asked them about negative statements. For example, we've asked them to rate their level of agreement with a statement that ChatGPT is being dishonest. So we have 8.1% who strongly agree with this statement, and 19.9% somewhat agreeing with this statement. I would say that most people are either neutral with the statement or they disagree that ChatGPT is being dishonest. Finally, we've also asked them whether using ChatGPT is dangerous. It is something that we hear from some of the discussions about ChatGPT. Again, I would not many people agree with this statement. Only 10.5% strongly agree that using ChatGPT is dangerous, and 27.7% say they somewhat agree. One item that we tracked in our survey is the level of trust that Singaporeans have on technology that uses AI. ChatGPT, generative AI, is just one type of technology that uses AI. We also have self-driving cars. We also have chatbots. And we also have those that try to collect data, from people. And so we've also been tracking the level of trust in technology that uses AI. We see that there's still a wide distribution in terms of trust. 6.2% say they have very high trust in tech that uses AI. 22.9% say they have a high level of trust, but about 19% say they have low trust in tech that uses AI, and with 5.2% saying they have very low trust. We've also done some analyses that we tried to dig deeper into our data. We found that younger people tend to use ChatGPT more frequently. We found a negative relationship between age and frequency of using ChatGPT. So younger people, they tend to use ChatGPT more frequently. In terms of gender, males are slightly report higher level of higher frequency of using ChatGPT than females. We also found a positive relationship between trust in AI technology and the use of ChatGPT. So people who trust AI technology, they're also more likely to use ChatGPT more frequently. Finally, we've also looked at the relationship between educational level and use of ChatGPT. We find that more educated people, those with higher educational attainment, they tend to also use ChatGPT more frequently. So I would say that these are some of the findings that we have from our recent survey when it comes to the use of ChatGPT in Singapore. And now I would like to invite Associate Professor Nuri Kim, who is the head of the Communication and Democracy Lab at InCube and also the director of our PhD and MA programs at the Weekly School, to share her thoughts about our findings. Nuri?
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Edson. It's really informative in understanding the trends of how Singaporeans are using ChatGPT and probably also, related technologies as well, other generative AI forms. So I'm supposed to give my commentary discussion on the findings. I think I would say I can kind of comment on three main things that I observed from this June 2023 survey results, especially in comparison with our previous round results. But I do want to kind of hear more from you all in the audience on your thoughts on these findings as well. And I think that will enable a conversation more than just hearing my thoughts on this. But first of all, just to kind of lay out some food for thought, I think one very notable finding, emphasized by Edson as well, is that there seems to be a very clear trend in terms of an increase in ChatGPT use. And I have to say that this is definitely not just a Singapore trend. I have collected data in the US as well, and compared to the numbers that we saw in the February data and the US data, what we're seeing in this June 2023 survey is astonishing, and the pace in which the usage has grown is really something. So we definitely see a rapid increase in the usage of ChatGPT. And again, if we consider other forms of generative AI that have popped up since earlier this year, I think in combination, it's definitely not a stretch to say that there's been a very strong and very rapid increase. So the question here is, we've observed that there is an increase and that's undeniable, but why? Right? So I think, the really interesting question that might arise out of this trend is why exactly are people using it more? And I think some kind of reasons, factors are pretty apparent. So I think on the one hand, I think every single one of you in the audience here, I assume, would have tried it out at least once, or if not, if unless you might actually be avid users. But I think everybody would have tried it. And the thing is, anybody who tries it, it's hard to not see the efficiency, the potential assistive value that it would have. And so, this accumulated experience as a society, as a group of people that's exposed to this new technology, that has grown. And so with that accumulated experience comes personal experience. So if you have tried it, you're definitely, that it can be helpful to you in certain ways, and that's going to propel you to use it more whenever the need arises, but also vicariously. So if you see your friends or your colleagues using it in innovative ways, in ways that you have not imagined, that could also help you to use it in those ways later on. And so kind of we're influencing one another through our usage. So personally and vicariously, I think the usage and the exposure and the comfort level has really grown, and that's probably one of the contributing factors, and that's kind of not hard to imagine. But there could be other reasons as well. So another kind of back end reason that might propel the greater usage, and again on a global scale as well, it could be because of the improvement in technology. So as all of us give billions of instances of prompts and inputs, and we tell it that was wrong, and why don't you do it this way, all of those things are being fed into becoming training data, and it will help the technology improve, and improve very rapidly as well. And so, the initial blunders that we may have seen with ChatGPT and Bard, and, like the funny instances where they weren't able to formulate the correct response, or they just come up with something that is just really funny, it just doesn't make sense. We're seeing less and less of that. So the kind of improvements in the accuracy of the information that it's able to provide, or the appropriateness of the information, all of those things are probably influencing our perception of the technology, that it is actually doing something good, and I can actually use this information. Um, Lastly, one other reason why there might be a great usage, I think, especially in the Singapore context, is because of changing social norms and the norms that surround technology use, especially the generative AI use. And it's a clarification of what is okay to do and what is not okay to do. So we have a better understanding of the boundaries, the terms of use, and what is ethical use and what is not really ethical use. And I think it was very helpful in my view, the stance that the government took from earlier this year to now, where the government has a very cautious but very open stance towards generative AI, and even in the schools as well. And I think that has kind of promoted this skepticism that is there, but you're still open to using it or trying it out or finding out how exactly it could work for you. And so I think that kind of brought about a very open and inclusive norm in Singapore, at least in terms of our approach or our openness to accepting and using the new technology. And so I think we're kind of at a phase where the usage is not just becoming more and broader and more extensive in society, but it's becoming more sophisticated. So people are able to draw their own boundaries and understand their terms of use, and to use it in ethical ways. That's not always been the case for other countries. So, depending on, for instance, Italy has a ban on ChatGPT, and certain school districts in the US also has a ban as well. And so in those places, there might be a completely different norm, and that people might be struggling in between this space where it's still open to them, they can use it, but they're forbidden to use it. And so that's a tougher kind of place to be in terms of understanding what's the right way to use it, or can I use it, should I use it. And so I think we can embrace this kind of atmosphere that we're in, where we are all a bit cautious and mindful, but we are still open to using this very new form of what some have called a disruptive form of technology. So I think those contribute towards why we're using ChatGPT more, especially in Singapore. But again, I'm open to hearing your thoughts on that. The second highlight that I saw in these findings is kind of this very interesting pairing of the changes in perception towards ChatGPT. So as you saw in slides, there's a majority of the people think that there are benefits. So it's seen as a helpful technology, more or less. So the balance is on the more positive side. People tend to agree more with the statement that it's helpful for you and that it saves time, right? So obviously, you guys all know this. So there is this positive perception about the benefits. There seems to be the pendulum has swung towards understanding and definitely seeing the positive benefits, the benefits. But if you look at the risk side, the risk perceptions. So the slides that Edson showed you, you saw dishonest and dangerous, but there could be other risk perceptions as well. The interesting thing is that the pendulum has not quite swung for those risk perceptions. So for the risk perceptions, people are still very much in the ambivalent state. They are undecided whether they agree or disagree that there are dangers to the technology, whether it's dishonest, or that it could be harmful, that it could be taking away jobs. I mean, those questions weren't asked, but basically, in the realm of perceiving this as a risk, people seem to be undecided or still unsure. Again, that's a very interesting contrast in my view, because you would think that they would go hand in hand together. So if you see a greater benefit, then your risk perception might be lower. It seems that the benefits perceptions are growing quickly, that there is a greater appetite for this technology based on the benefits that they're seeing. So greater and greater usage is allowing your benefit perceptions to grow, but the risk perceptions are not being pulled down as quickly as the benefit perceptions become more and more positive. So you see a bit of a kind of a I guess, a time gap in the way that benefit perceptions grow quickly, but risk perceptions are not really being tuned down as quickly, or even going up either. So you see this kind of disjunct here. Um, Risk and benefit perceptions are important in the sense that they are both very well-known predictors of usage and further adoption and recommendation towards others, and ultimately your attitude towards the technology itself. So remember, the perceptions are one thing and attitude towards the technology is a different thing. So ultimately, this kind of balance in risk and benefit perception will make you formulate, this kind of comprehensive evaluation of the technology. And ultimately, that can have an impact on whether you want the government to do stuff about it, right? So it's not just, do I like this technology? Do I not like this technology? But what do you want? What kind of protections do you want for this technology? For instance, do we want censorship? Do we want a banning? Do we want companies to do something about it? Or do we want an all open policy? So all of those are different ways in which there could be different kind of boundaries or guidances, guards against technology use, and what people feel comfortable with will ultimately kind of depend on their initial perceptions of risks and benefits. So I think that part is also very interesting, this kind of lag that you're seeing in the way benefits grow quickly, but risks are not being reduced or increased as quickly. And the last point that I think could be highlighted relates to a demographic imbalance that we're starting to see. And again, this has also been observed in the US data as well. So again, my data is from February, so it's a little bit earlier. But in the US, you definitely see a huge imbalance in terms of males using it more. We see that now, even in the June data that Edson is presenting. So males tend to use it more. More educated people tend to use ChatGPT more. There could be other aspects like your interest in science and technology or your interest in engineering. Trust in AI is also a huge kind of predictor of greater use, and so on and so forth. So there could be racial differences. I don't think so in the Incube data, but if I'm not wrong, we did see something like that in our US data. And so these are all kind of questions, right? Why are there these demographic disparities, inequities in use? Right? If the technology is helpful, if then people will tend to use it in similar ways. Why not? If there's a ban on technology, then people would not use it. But why is there a difference there as well? And so I think this can become a very important question as we, kind of continue to live with technologies, not just ChatGPT, but with other probably more advanced forms of generative AI that we will be seeing in our lifetime. Why, right? And what are the implications of that? I think just at an anecdotal level, I can definitely see this becoming a very sad kind of problem. Like in at NTU, we I think all of our students are very highly educated, and students know very well what are the boundaries, how to give the right prompt to ChatGPT to get the right results. We also, we train our students to understand that this is not completely accurate and how else you can verify this information, and what are some things to look for that are maybe like kind of red flags where that looks a little suspect, and you go on to validate the information or get further evidence. And so our students are learning more and more about how to use the technology in ethical ways, in ways that are clear and transparent, but also in ways that will actually help them, right? So there's value in using it without getting in trouble. But if you think about those who don't have access to this kind of literacy training, or this kind of understanding of AI, or access to technology at all, there's going to be a disparity, right? And I think ultimately, because the technology is able to speed things up for people, it's able to give additional form of assistance, just like a grammar check tool can, or Google can. This is also going to be able to help you in certain ways. And if it's helpful for certain people more so than others, that is definitely something to worry about and something to think about as a society, how we can kind of amend for that disparity. So I think those are my three observations. Why is there a greater usage? Why is there this kind of disjunct in the perceptions of risk versus benefits and the demographic imbalance that we're starting to see?